In order to distract the community from noticing just how poorly Doom the Dark Ages has been received, the community...
Harmon, we've been through this before. It's too early to tell if it's a failure. But you know what? When you sit there and look at how many people are playing it, a lot of people did sit there and go to Game Pass for one big reason. Now, I'm going to sit here and give my whole opinion on what I think of this game when I sit there and do the Dreamcast guy video, because we know that he ain't no real gamer anyways. He ain't nothing but a fake gamer.
Has gone to one of their age-old just responses, like, oh, if you don't like the game, if you're not happy with the game, if you're not playing the game, you're just not very good.
Well, when it comes to Dark Side Phil, absolutely. The guy is terrible at video games. The guy sucks at video games. I don't see how he has garnered such a huge following as he has.
And immediately, they go to the absolute most bottom of the barrel, most pathetic, like reprehensible human beings on the platform, Dark Side Phil. You know, they immediately like clip something of like him.
Wow, even Harmon knows that you're not even a real gamer, that you're a terrible gamer at that fact. That's saying something.
Of him streaming the game and saying that like, oh, this is the kind of person who is hating on Doom the Dark Ages. You know, someone who doesn't like video games, who would rather be...
Okay, now I'm confused, Harmon. Are you standing up for people that like Doom the Dark Ages or not? Because it sounds like you're trying to downplay Dark Side Phil, but then uplift people who do like it. Man, I swear, you never know what you're going to get in a Harmon Smith video.
Pulling Hulk Hogan's, right? You know, Dark Side Phil is just, has been for a long time, is seen as like everything wrong with the gaming community.
Very true, but I would also throw you and Dreamcast guy in along with that.
And of course, Phil didn't like that. You know, he came out, he started spurging out, you know, saying that people took what he did out of context, that he likes the game and all that, but like...
Nah, it wasn't taken out of context. I sat there and saw the gameplay. He is just absolutely terrible when it comes to those types of games. Well, in the most games in generally. He probably had a hard time playing Princess Peach Showtime.
What interests me about this isn't that, like, you know, Phil versus like the Doom community, right? Because I think both sides are just completely reprehensible. But like,
the only thing reprehensible over here is how big your forehead keeps getting, but your IQ continues to go down. You really need to lay off the paint chips, Harmon.
To me, what I find interesting is just the attempts at trying to like distract people from the very real fact that like Doom the Dark Ages has not been as well received as Doom Eternal.
Well, that is very true, Harmon, but you're taking that out of context. If you remember, Doom Eternal came out during the pandemic, right during the height of the pandemic, so everybody was locked up inside, so they had all the time in the world to play the game. So, of course, any game during that time had a higher boost in player activity.
Right. This was evident, like, upon release, that this game wasn't as played, that people weren't talking about it, that it didn't sell as well. And there were a lot of copes, you know, going around, like, as to why.
Well, yeah, a lot of people are playing on Game Pass because from what I can see, it is overpriced. $70 is too high for this game.
You know, people spurged out about, like, Xbox Game Pass, and, you know, people were blaming game journals, you know, but, like, what it really comes down to, really, is that Doom is a declining franchise. Nobody cares about it. It's generic, it's uninspired, it's boring.
I think you got it confused, Harmon. It's not the Doom games you're talking about. It's half of your IPs on Nintendo there. And what about Game Pass? You're just jealous that you can't have a service like Game Pass.
And there is fundamentally no real room for innovation, you know? Like, the Dark Ages' great claim to fame is that, ooh, it's a prequel this time. You're going into castles and stuff like that. It's like...
Yes, that's awesome. The first person shooting is awesome in it. The gameplay, which is the first person shooting, but the whole scenery is beautiful. The music is amazing. Harmon, you need to really stop the coping. You're lucky that I don't have that song.
Okay, but that's not Doom, you know? Like, again, this is the problem Doom has, is that, like, at its core, it's a very generic shooter game where you just run around and just, like, press the shoot button over and over again. You know, there is no, like...
Harmon, you can literally say that with any game. Here, we'll use your favorite Pokemon example. Pokemon is just a generic RPG turn-based type game where you just sit there and throw out a random Pokemon. There's nothing innovative. See, you can do the same thing with anything.
It doesn't really have any iconic iconography, right? It's not like a brand
Harmon, stop using big words. They do not suit you.
the way that like Super Mario Bros. Is, where they can like, take all these deviations and like put the characters in any kind of situations and any kind of genre, and it just kind of works. Like if you take Doom,
Oh, how did I know that he could not go a single video without throwing some type of Nintendo reference into one of his videos? This video was literally supposed to be about Darkside Phil and the Doom game, but he still has to throw Nintendo into it. Even though I am a little surprised that it took him only halfway through this time. I would have thought it would have been within the first 2 minutes.
off of Mars, like you just have a generic action game where you're fighting demons, That's all this is. Like this is no different than like
And Mario is just some generic platformer game. See, you can say that about anything.
any other action game put out in the past several years. Is that Doom is just an unbearably generic action game. One that really
And Mario Kart is nothing more than a overpriced generic racing game. See, we can keep going back and forth and keep using this as much as we want. You can literally say that about anything, Harmon. You've never even played those games.
really shouldn't be propped up the way it is. So many people like come out and try and tell you that like Doom is this highly influential IP, that it's this huge deal, that
Because it is.
it's this cultural phenomenon, and yet it just isn't, Like, a lot of people were really surprised when Animal Crossing New Horizons outperformed Doom Eternal.
I was actually surprised that one myself. But the thing is, like I keep saying with Nintendo, number one, that game came out during the pandemic. And number two, Nintendo games have been lacking in good third-party game support that people had no choice but to buy their first party. So all their first parties got a huge inflation thing on them with people buying them due to there not being that many games available.
It sold like what? Like 10 times more than it, at least.
Doom Eternal sold more than your Princess Peach Showtime and Mario Luigi Brothership.
Without severely discounting it. Doom is just like one of those really forced, like westernized, like IPs that are just shoved down people's throats,
Oh, he's going to go into the whole Western RPG rant. Let's hear it. And Harmon, can you please do something about your hair? It's really driving me crazy.
Kind of like Ultima, or kind of like, any of those old like PC games like Myst or whatever that nobody actually plays. Like Doom is supposed to be like the benchmark, like hallmark, like example of like, the defining Western video game. But like,
no, I would probably give Baldur's Gate 3 that one, or Elden Ring at the moment.
The reality is, and this is something the West really needs to acknowledge, is that the West is not and never has been a powerhouse when it comes to video games. All of the real culturally significant video games.
Oh my God, he's so stupid. Can someone please do not tell him that his precious Donkey Kong games that he loves so much, if it wasn't for Western developers? Rare Games is a Western developer. It is based in the UK. If it wasn't for them, Donkey Kong probably would never exist right now.
That actually are influential and actually are actually popular and actually maintain their relevance like decades after the fact. They are all exclusively Japanese. People still play Pac-Man. People still play the original Super Mario Bros. People still play the original Legend of Zelda.
I mean, this guy loves Japan so much. Please, Japan, will you please take him? He belongs with you guys. We really do not want him. We will literally pay for his passport and pay for his plane ticket if you guys accept him and give him full citizenship. Please take him. Is there any objections from anybody down in the comments?
They still play like Metroid and Pokemon and the original Pikmin, like...
Harmon, you don't even like Metro Prime or Pikmin. Why are you using them as examples for games that you do not like?
The list goes on and on and on. There are dozens and dozens of examples of Japanese games that are way more culturally relevant than Doom.
Can you please name a first-person shooter that is more relevant than Doom that's a Japanese game? Please, Harmon?
But simply don't have the same kind of hype around them because they aren't Western franchise.
Harmon, can you please just name one? I am begging you. Name one Japanese-made first-person shooter. Can you please do that?
The Western gaming sphere has this very ignorant, self-centered, like genuine belief that what they put out is bigger and better and more popular than what the Japanese do, when in reality...
Harmon, you're talking a bunch of nonsense. Get to the point. Tell us, which games are they, you freaking idiot?
That is not and never has been true at any point in its history. With that being said about Doom the Dark Ages.
Guys, I just finally realized why Harmon doesn't like Metroid Prime. Guess what? It's because it's not a Japanese developed game. It was made in America.
This is like the typical AAA trilogy cycle. I used to call this the PlayStation cycle, but I think these days this kind of like correlates with like all major AAA games. This idea that like a game comes out and it's seen as like this huge influential thing.
Well, it is. And if you hate America so much, Harmon, why don't you just leave? Why haven't you tried to go to Japan? Well, probably because they may require you to have an IQ test and you won't pass it.
And then like the sequel is hyped up as being a better, it's just the same thing, but better,
What are you talking about? The combat is completely different from Eternal to Doom 2016. I haven't even played them and I know that.
And then you have the third game where nobody actually played the first two and it just kind of falls off. That's basically what happened with the Doom Eternal game.
Well, Harmon, it would actually be the Doom games, not the Doom Eternal, because Doom Eternal is the second one.
That's what happened with the Doom reboot trilogy. Is that people got bored.
Most likely they got bored playing your game, so they went to go play some Doom.
Of running around open arenas, mashing ZT to the right trigger. What do you call it on the Xbox controller? Well, anyway, the right trigger.
Harmon, it is literally a right trigger. Okay, I'm looking at my Xbox Pro controller right now, and it literally says RT, which stands for right trigger.
Mashing the right trigger button to just slaughter demons over and over and over again. The same repetitive enemies over and over and over again.
Okay, and you're sitting here breaking your weapons over and over and over again, hitting the same enemies over and over and over again in Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. You can say that about any damn game.
Of course people are going to get bored of that. A change of aesthetic and environment isn't going to change the fact that
okay, even though I love Pokemon, we can sit there and go with Pokemon in your sense. How about this? All you ever do is just mash the A button over and over and over again. Maybe they should change the aesthetics in Pokemon.
Doom the Dark Ages is just a slower, more boring, rehashed version of older Doom games.
Well, Harmon, you're a more slowing, boring, rehashed version of Switch Force.
If you're interested in Doom, you may as well play the older games. But
Harmon, not all of us have time to play a lot of the older games because unlike your platform, we actually get a lot more newer games a lot more often. You rarely get those newer games, so you're forced to play older games.
There are better games than Doom out there.
And you have yet to name any more that are as good as Doom. You have yet to name a first-person shooting game that is as good as Doom that is from a Japanese studio.
And that is the grim reality that Doom fanboys have to account for is that people don't want to spend their time just killing the same demons over and over and over again.
And people don't want to spend their same time killing the same guardians and goblins over and over and over again, like in Tears of the Kingdom and Breath of the Wild.
In different environments. Doom has to do a whole lot more to innovate if it wants to stay relevant. And in spite of its best attempts at doing that, incorporating platforming elements into Doom Eternal and
what did Tears of the Kingdom do to innovate? Can you please explain?
And the dashing and stuff like that. In spite of its best efforts, it has not really truly been successful at doing that. Doom the Dark Ages seems like one of the big underwhelming titles of the year.
Nope, that's going to go to Mario Kart World.
And we are still in this period where the community doesn't want to acknowledge it.
Oh, thank God this video is over. Dezire, can you please explain to me, how do you get through one of his videos without needing a beer? I really need to know this because I am so close to drinking and I don't really ever drink. I have drank maybe 2 times in the last 14 months. The last time I drank pretty much was when I got married. So please, Dezire, can you help me out? I need to know how you are able to get through these videos without drinking. Well, that's it for my reaction. Let me know down in the comments if you agree with me or not. Please like, share, and subscribe. And until next time, stay vigilant.